Hey guys, this will be video 6 for the how to design build a 59 Korina Les Paul replica, and sometimes using Stuart McDonald templates. In this video I'm going to continue talking about the lacquer work, because once you kind of start working in that direction, I think it's wise to stay in that direction and go ahead and knock out at least your base coats, because just because, for instance, like after I got the top where I wanted it, at least the foundation, then I'm doing really clean binding work, and then I'm getting ready to either spray some more sealer like clear sealer atop the guitar, or either I'm going to start staining the mahogany. If my mahogany was not very attractive, then you could come in with the trans tint mahogany. Excuse me, I've been routing a little bit, so my throat's going to be really scratchy. Sorry. But nonetheless, if you're getting ready to clear coat this mahogany just the way you clear coated your front, or I call it stain. And when I'm talking about doing stain work, we all know that that means applying a stain or a color on the wood. But I also mean, like when I'm staining the guitar, that might be that I'm referring to, I'm shooting the nitrocellulose lacquer that is tinted. So if I say, spraying the stain, that's kind of what I meant. It's not that I made a mistake, or that's what I'm thinking. So just kind of bear with me. But when you're at this point right here, if you've got a body that is, and typically your body is from a different board than your neck, it's very, very rare that your neck and your body out of the mahogany is going to come from the same board. You might end up trying to match the two to make them work out. And you might have to stain the body with a color, like a brown mahogany, or maybe a brown with a little bit of red in it, or something like that, or pick your own poison, as I say. And I just noticed this guitar, I'm actually getting ready to put some clear coat sealer on this body and neck in real time, and we'll be applying it with a brush. I'm not going to be doing any spraying, just because I want to work it in the grain really well. We'll talk about that stuff. But where I'm going with this is, once you start going in that direction, don't let the project get shelved. You want to really get this behind you, because what will happen is you've spent all this time doing this really intricate binding, scraping, and cleaning, and assessment, and all that jazz. And you're at a point to where either now come in here with some 400 grit sandpaper and just lightly prep that and shoot all the clear. And while you are shooting the clear, you may go ahead and just shoot the whole guitar. That's why I have the fretboard taped off. And I learned this from watching the Robert Benedetto series, where he would tape off the fretboard in component form, and then he would tape off the rest of the guitar according to how he was doing it. So that as he finished one stage, then he would remove the tape over here, but this would still be, all taped up and very precisely taped, along the binding to the mahogany. In other words, you're taping everything off with the intention of being able to just shoot it all at once, if you elect to go that route, which I didn't. And I dropped my brush, so bear with me for a second. I'm gonna get this cleaned up. But the thing about it is, as I was cleaning all this binding with the scraper and I was in binding prep mode, I also realized, this is a great opportunity to go ahead, come in with the lacquer thinner on a little bit of toilet paper or something like that, and just really clean it. And then obviously come in here and with a real clean cloth with some lacquer thinner, Do not use acetone because if you do, it will melt the binding. It's way too hot of a chemical, but mineral spirits is not hot enough. But lacquer thinner is perfect to actually wipe across this binding several times and it not really melt on you. It'll kind of soften it a little bit, maybe knock the edge off of it, round it over a little bit. But basically, what I was doing is just making certain that it was clean so that when I come in and I start doing my brush work, I'm going to call it sealer. When I'm sealing all the mahogany, whether I'm sealing it with like a sanding sealer or what's it called? Vinyl, Baleen vinyl sealer, which is a sealer for lacquer that you would spray lacquer over atop that. I don't use the vinyl sealer anymore. I noticed that I didn't really need it. Uh, and I didn't really care for it because it had kind of a waxy feel. And I felt like it caused me to lose the natural grain of the mahogany. And I'm kind of a strange bird in that I do not come in here and do a pore filler, Pore. I like the grain. I like the pores to be open, even if you see it after 17 coats or 20 coats. I don't care because I like my nitrocellulose to be very thin, and I want the wood to be as natural and as beautiful as possible. Because when I finish the guitar, basically, it's very rare that I finish the guitar and buff it out to precision shiny finish. I usually finish them out wet sanded with like a 800 to a 1200 grit sandpaper, and I leave them matte. I think it's just beautiful. It's very natural, and it ends up looking like a French polished finish. Whereas you would take shellacs, melt them, and rub them on with a rag or a soft cloth, like a diaper or something. And I have done that before. It's extremely labor intensive, and it's very hard on your fingers too. So, because you're really forcing into this. Uh, why do that when you can achieve a beautiful finish with a lacquer and a chemical and colors and what I called artificial colors? So I digress there a little bit, but nonetheless, I don't like doing the pour filling. I like seeing the natural wood because after it's all said and done, after I've shot about 10 to 20 coats of really thin nitro, and when I'm talking, multiple coats, I'm talking just super fan, almost fan thin coats that I'm applying with this finish. It's not like sprayed on really heavy at all. Okay, so so that's what I'm about to do. I'm about to take the brush and just do some clear coat. But we'll talk about this top just a little bit more because once I start putting lacquer on it, I will be on the back. I'll be flipping it over, and I don't want to be trying to handle it and talking about the top. So we'll do a little bit of a flyby, not that I haven't already, but I'm very happy with it. I'm not sure how much of this. See if I can find my pointer here. I'm not sure how much of this repair is showing up because when I did the video, the last video, I was like, yeah, the elephant in the room and all this jazz. And then I watched the video, I was like, hell, you can't even see it. You can't even see the repair. But trust me, it's there. Because I believe when I turn it this way and turn it upside down, I think that's when you really see the repair. I'm going to throw it under the bus a little bit, or throw myself under the bus a little bit, because I'm the one that did the goofy work. But that's the line right there. There's the cross line right there and the cross line right there. Again, I could come in and I could take the browns and the reds and the cherries or whatever, and I could fog it up and probably kind of make it go away. But I really like the clear honey amber, which and I've got the additional tint color work that I did to get it a little bit darker. So we'll talk about that here in just a minute. But I just wanted to point that out that was kind of the elephant in the room that I was addressing and trying to get under control. But nonetheless, I really am extremely happy with the initial base coat that I have. And if this is going to be my personal guitar, then I'm cool with it exactly where it is, other than it's going to be wet sanded and it's not really going to have any sheen at all. But there's a strong possibility I probably will sell this guitar one day. And to find my addiction to building guitars, as well as, I like to see them go into someone else's hands. Uh, I built this about a year and a half ago, played it for that whole time, but never did any clear cut work. It's just been natural. It's never been out of the house. But I love this little guitar. It plays phenomenal, and it's got a nice little fat round 50s neck on it, like a 58 or pre 58 neck. It's 15/16 of an inch thick at the first fret, and just barely 1 inch thick at the 11th fret. So that's a traditional like 58 Les Paul. But I got off track there a little bit doing the flyby. And the chatoyancy is just—it's pretty much off the charts. What would you rate this? Probably being very, very critical. I would say it's probably a triple A. Uh, it's getting pretty close to a 5A because the flame carries through the whole top. But I'm gonna be really critical and say it's a triple A plus. It really is beautiful. But it's a great lemon honey esque amber base, so that if someone ever did want to come in and spray the brown, the typical brown burst, or possibly I think they're doing one now called the Mojave, which is really beautiful. It kind of reminds me of the Gretsch Dwayne Eddy, the modern Gretsch Dwayne Eddy 6120, which is more of the sunset orange desert color. It's really like a desert sunset. It's really, really beautiful. It's very tasteful, but it's very dark. This is not that guitar. This is very much your honey, amber, lemon esque guitar. In other words, this would be considered like a faded lemon burst if you sanded it. So I'm going to leave it this way. I don't want to come in and do any burst work, because whomever buys it, then if I had have done that, then they would have to sand that off or change it. And we're, as Les Paul owners and aficionados and collectors or players, everybody's got their own idea of what is a beautiful Les Paul. And to me, this is getting pretty darn close to it. But is it perfect? No, it's a little bit. Still, it's a little bit too much. A little bit too much lemon to me. I would prefer it to be a little bit more like the Dwayne Eddy sunset color, but I don't want to do that because it might kill the value of it for someone in the future. Let me check the time. All right, it's been a long time. Let me pause for a moment, and I may have to get a cough drop, but let me take a drink of water and I'll be right back. Okay, so let's talk about achieving your idea of the perfect lemon burst or dirty lemon or tea or whatever color you think is really pretty. I've already covered in enough detail, how to come in with the clear nitro and do all your seal work after you've done the stain work. So I'm not going to talk about that. And then I've already talked about how we went into the couple of drops of the what is it called? I can't even think. Sometimes I have to look at what I'm trying to say. Honey amber, which in hindsight, I probably would have been okay to have gone with the stain color called vintage amber. But be careful with the vintage amber, whereas I used 8 to 10 drops of the honey amber. You might only need to do 3 or 4 drops of the vintage, and I'm just grabbing a drop number out of the air. And that's what I meant by I was so fearful of putting too much of this when I first started it again, because I got myself in so much trouble like 20 something years back working with the vintage amber and coming out of the gate way too dark. This is called a brown mahogany. And the reason I bought the brown mahogany is when I first built this, when I first got this body wood right here, I got to tell you, it was pretty ugly. It was just really, really light and very orange, and I was terrified to work with it because I knew the neck that was on this guitar was going to be off the charts beautiful from a standpoint of chatoyancy. That's a quarter sawn Honduran that I actually got from Woodcraft, but this body wood came from my vendor in Ohio, I believe is where he is, or maybe Indiana. I think it's Ohio. But okay, so getting back on track, you're working with these tents, but what I saw in the last video was really beautiful, but in person it was much more lemon than you would see on camera. And a lot of it may have to do with the lighting that's in the room, but nonetheless, it was just way too lemon in person. So I came in with this, uh, tinted nitro. In other words, as you already know, the tinted with the honey amber. And then I added some nitro in the, where's the little canister? You know where the canister is? Oh, the canister's empty because I poured it over into that. But the canister was about, it was getting fairly low. So I filled it full of nitro, dropped a couple more drops of the honey amber, okay? Achieved that color again, maybe just a little bit darker. Then I poured every bit of that over into this container. Okay, so we're going chemist mode here. Now I filled this back up with my clear nitro, and then I came in with the brown mahogany, and I dropped 2 drops. I started out with 1 drop, and I mean it got dark. It was really dark, and it would have been dangerous to have tried to have taken this and started dropping brown mahogany in this. So what I did, I mixed up the brown mahogany here. I can't remember. I may have even transferred it over into this right here. I probably did. I may have even mixed it up in that right there. And it was really, really dark. But then I took this honey, poured, you know, whatever job I was going to do, which is I was just going to spray this top about 5 more coats with the deepened honey amber. So I put the honey amber in here, and then I started taking this lacquer, which was mixed up, which was very dark, and pouring over into this until I got this deep, beautiful black tea. It's kind of like a honey amber tea, like a black tea. It was very, very dark. Almost so much so I was scared to work with it. But then, and it was, again, it's fairly dark, but I knew I had enough build coats on this right here. If I shot 1 coat on here and all of a sudden it just went charcoal, well, then I could have sanded that off. It wouldn't have been that big of a deal. And I even did a test run when I first started working with it, and I kind of shot like a sunburst. In the event it was too dark, at least it might have been too dark and it might have looked really good. It might have been my first sunburst finish that I would have been happy with, because being the brown mahogany, it has a little bit of that red color to it, but more brown. So it was a very safe color to work with. So as I started spraying it on the perimeter, I realized, wow, it really didn't change the lemon all that much, but it just started accenting the lemon-esque look and making it much deeper and richer. So I went ahead and sprayed a nice coat, let it sit, and really let it set for a while, and I kept an eye on it. And then I came back, I realized, wow, this is going to be okay. So I shot another, I think another two operations. So I shot about 4 to 6 coats um, atop what you saw in the last video with that dark of a lacquer. Now that's very thin. That's where I shot the last coat. I really cut it fairly aggressively with the lacquer thinner, and it really melted into it. So, but it was fairly dark. So you see where we started out. So I say all that to say this: you're not going to be able to achieve like your dirty lemon look unless you go a little bit darker. hence the reason I made the statement. Maybe it would have been okay to have come right out of the gate with the vintage amber, which is probably more along those lines right there. I say probably it is. I remember working with the vintage amber in the past. I used to have a bunch of this, and it was much darker, and it had a little bit more orange. I even had some Gretsch orange, and I would experiment with that whole Mojave Desert look, or the Dwayne Eddy-esque look, and that's where I always got myself in trouble. I always got way too dark. So I spent a lot of time there talking about stains, but just come out of the gate with a real weak foundation, and I learned that from Robert Benedetto when he first started. Uh, when I was watching the video series where he had this beautiful guitar, and all of a sudden he took this rag with, um, you know, honey, amber, lemon look, and he just stained the whole guitar, and it was horrible. It was just lemon yellow. But then once he started shooting his lacquer, it started getting warmer and warmer and warmer. And then by the time he did do his sunburst, the lemon center was positively stunning because it was very subtle, it was very weak, and it showed all of the beautiful figure as well. And then he accented all the guitar work with his darker stains out here, and he even so much so he did the actual brown right here, and he did the dark brown up in here, so much so that you really couldn't even see through the stain. It was very dark. And then I think he sprayed it really dark down here, and then you flip it up and you'd see all the beautiful in between. Okay, so there's probably a lot of videos out there to help you with that, and I spent probably a lot more time than I wanted to talking about that, but I'm just gonna keep on with this video because I don't want to do two takes. So let me pause, get set up to transition into doing the clear coat on the mahogany, and then I don't think there will be anything else to talk about in relation to the top. But once I pause, if I realize I forgot something, I'll come back and we'll cover that. Otherwise, we'll come back and we'll start sealing the mahogany. Make sure the camera's rolling. I'm going to spend a few minutes here talking about electronics a little bit because the whole idea about once you get ready to start doing all your clear coat work, or what I would consider calling your finish work, you really want to have your design platform finished. Whether it's a traditional layout with the four controls and the three-way, or as this guitar has the potential to have the master volume. And as I had mentioned, this area up in here goes all the way over to about right there, and it goes all the way down to right there. It's a very much a controlled cavity, but one would look at it, if I can find a cover. I don't know where they are, but one would look at it and think that, wow, it's just a traditional Les Paul, but there's room to do additional electronic work in there. And if you are going to build a guitar that's extremely versatile platform, well, then you need to make certain that you think about all the different ways that it might get wired. And you can't see it, but you might see it now that the light is there. That's where the drill bit is coming through right there. That would allow, we'll talk about it in a second, but you'll see my reasoning. Make sure I don't scratch up that top. That's a 3/16 inch drill bit. Okay, and you're going to see, okay, you got that right there. That goes right there, comes out right there in the edge. That would be like your master volume access. That would be sufficient because this one is 1/4 of an inch. And you might think, wow, that's an enormous hole. It's not, because you need, I'm not going to try to, just trust me, that's 1/4 of an inch on that pitch that you just saw, because you're going to have a wire that will go over to the master volume and then return from the master volume and come back over, and then that single wire can go into this cavity over here. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in a moment. And then you've got your primary cut right here. In case I forget, it's a 1/4 of an inch hole, but it's cut on that angle right there, which connects to the primary control path of your traditional Les Paul. Okay, so again, as I had mentioned, on the surface, one would look at that and go, oh wow, it's a cool Les Paul. Well, there's a lot more going on there than just the whole Les Paul design, because, and I'm just going to wire it up and show you my thought process as to what the potential of this little guitar is, or your design that you're building yourself. In other words, if I were getting ready to wire this, how would I go about doing it? You've got a lot of times we'll take our Switchcraft 3-way, we'll do all the wiring, and I want to say it's 4 wires at a minimum. I know it's 4 wires. There may be 5. I think it's 4, but there'll be all of these wires coming off of the Switchcraft that will then get fed into the back and down the channel and out into the control cavity. Okay, so most of us know that have ever built a guitar. But the whole idea of wiring the guitar is you have power in from the jack, and that would go in right there, then go up the control cavity, and then connect to the 3-way, and then it would power each individual lug, which would then travel down and power each individual volume control. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a bypass, and it in all actuality, it's coming out of this control cavity, and it's coming out of this location right here, and then it's going to go over into that cavity, and then it's going to loop back, and then it's going to then go into that position and go into the location, so that it can then be soldered to the 3-way. So in other words, we're just taking a little detour, but one might not want the master volume on their Les Paul, and how could you do it such that it would be already pre-wired, yet they wouldn't have to go that route. The way I would do it is take a really long wire. I'm just going to feed one at a time. That way I'll be assured that I'll be able to save camera time. Just going to do the job first, and then I'll show you my reasoning later on. And this is how I'm going to leave this wire right here. I'm just going to leave it looped. And then I'm going to make certain that I really put enough excess in there, but not too much. There's no sense, because what would happen if you were going to come in and turn this into a master volume, you're going to have, with the treble bleed network, then all of that can be wired. All that can be wired right here, outside of the body. It doesn't need to be 6 inches long, but it does need to be long enough that you can protect your guitar and do all of your wiring, because once you put this volume potentiometer down into the hole, you can kind of turn it in that fashion so that this then now corkscrews down in there. Okay, it'll kind of corkscrew down in there and have a little bit of excess, and not cause you to have to take care of all the slack up here. All the slack will be taken care of in this area down here. So let's say that but again, keep in mind, we elected to not go with the master volume yet, but we're able to just tuck that away right there. And then let me get the longest one. Oh, they're about the same. Okay, so I've already made a bit of a mistake. Not necessarily a mistake. I just got way too much excess wire. Let me just do the job, and then I promise you I'll get it on camera. Okay, so I got a lot of slack right there. No sense in wasting wire. So I'm gonna push all that slack down into this cavity. I have plenty of length right there to do any wiring. If anything, you might want to put some tape on that or just fold it over, whatever you need to do. Very nice and clean. And this will go on the inside of the pickup ledge. This will go down. And then at this point, let's see if I can find, so you see what I've got going on. Now it's time to clean it up by finding out which one. Pull out the slack. Pull out the slack, but leave yourself enough excess, to tuck that away. Pull out the slack. It's kind of like stringing up your shoes, and then all that'll get tucked away in that area right there. And you can build a traditional Les Paul, or in the future, you can install the master volume. Okay. So, very versatile little guitar. Again, I designed this guitar to be my own personal little session guitar or my own personal little guitar. Why? Because as I mentioned, I love the idea of the Gretsch design and having the ability to, oh, there it is, to come in with this really understated little master volume control down there, real low profile. Or if I wanted to go full-blown functionality from a standpoint of doing volume swells. If I was going to design this guitar to be a volume swell machine, then I say might, I've already done this. I've already determined whether that should stand up perfectly straight or should it be on a bit of a pitch, and for comfort, for doing your volume swelling work as you're doing picking. Because keep in mind, if you're able to pick up here and do volume swells, you're automatically going to get a much warmer tone because you're picking very far away from the bridge. That was the whole design reasoning for having the master volume on this little platform. Because on my Gretsch Penguin that I built, the knob is like way down here because it's such a big body guitar. But this one, like, you could really take advantage of the fact, and I found that it was more comfortable if it remains on that little bit of a pitch right there, and you're able to hook around it, and it just works really well. Is it the most attractive thing in the world? No, not necessarily, but nonetheless, if it's functional and you're able to produce certain tones, those are things like that would change the music industry. If you had like a Joe Bonamassa type playing this guitar with that modification on it, and he's doing the volume swell work that he's capable of doing, you'd have every kid in America and Europe wanting that mod. I guess Europe. I don't know if the guys in Europe like Joe. I think they do because I think he's all the time playing over in London or possibly touring Europe. So, nonetheless, I like doing things like that. It's fun. Or leave it alone. Nobody ever knows. It's got a cover on it, and it's all good to go. Okay, so I had to spend a lot of time talking about that, but I think that's a very unique little mod that is very much, well, it's just completely concealed. Everything about it is completely concealed. Okay, so let me pause, get that. Well, I don't think there's any. Oh, Yeah, there's no reason to pause because I didn't even go ahead and put in the pickup. So let me put the pickup in and I'll show you how well everything still fits. I think I mentioned that this, I got too much, you know what, on the table. Um, this pickup, yeah, this hole right here is 1/4 of an inch. And I'll show this because that would be the only 2 wires that are traveling through that location. It would be the power supply coming out of the control cavity, coming up, taking the detour, then snaking back around. I had considered taking that output and running it back down into the channel, but I thought that makes no sense when I've got that large cavity. Even if you didn't have the large cavity, you could just drill from this corner straight across and tap into your traditional Les Paul uh, 3-way control cavity. Does that make sense? So the power comes up through this hole, detours over here, but then it doesn't congest that hole by going back into it having three wires. You maintain just 2 wires right here. That wire goes over to the control cavity, and then you get a really sweet installation of your traditional. Okay, let's look at the control cavity first. There's your wire. Okay, your neck humbucker wiring, and then looks like a traditional Les Paul to me. And nobody will ever know what's going on in that. We're going to call this like the neck pickup control cavity, a satellite. We'll call it a satellite control cavity. So, and then you got your little, you know, motivational wire to possibly do a master volume with a treble bleed network, and you'll be in good shape. Cool little guitar, very sexy, and from a standpoint of functionality, um, adds a lot to it. So now I'm going to pause, and we're going to seal the back of the guitar. That's probably only going to take about 10 minutes anyway, and then we'll finish the video after that. I completely forgot to do a quick mock-up, and this is going to be strictly for my own reference. That would show you the guitar if you went traditional. Looks pretty good. And even though that's kind of the butter cream pickguard, look, it looks fairly nice once it comes together with the binding. So maybe the patch quilt thing is not that big of a deal. That's definitely a parchment white pickup ring, but I just want you to see roughly what would happen if you were to do the master volume. And I'm going to try to keep my finger out of the way, but it would be tasteful in as far as being an addition to the whole original design, but it would also be very functional because according to how tall you set this pickup, I mean the little knob, that would determine the functionality of it, or whether it was very straight up and down. So again, I'm kind of doing this for my own visual reference because I wish there's some way I could get my fingers out of the way, but I don't want to put any tape on that top. But and then I've even got it designed where it could be moved in a little bit further. Again, I would not be running the pick guard because I don't like a pick guard, but some people do, and you wouldn't want to design it so that this was up here, and and possibly hinder someone's future changes and all that jazz. So pretty cool little feature. So now I'll lay it on the table, see what it looks like mocked up with these 4, and might turn the guitar a little bit. It's a little bit busy for some people, but for us Gretsch players, it would be. I need the taller phone, and I don't. Let me pause. Okay, I won't be able to turn it because I got so much crap over there, but I'll be able to turn it a little bit. This really helps me from a design standpoint uh, to look at the guitar in its entirety and ask myself whether I like what I see. And I got so much, on the table that I can't hardly move. So I just pick it up. So stop complaining. I love it. I think it's awesome. And even with the pick guard, believe it or not, the pick guard's kind of cool looking. Looks good. I should have put the three way in there. I won't, but well, yeah, why not? Should be able to take me a second. Again, herein lies why you should do all of your initial fit work, because it makes your job so much easier later on when you realize after you've got all this beautiful finish work done that you don't have to pull out your Dremel or some sort of tool and try to fit that. You've already fit it. Okay. So I like it. I like it. Looks good. Sexy. I love that. I got to tell you, I really love the color. That color's really looking nice with all the other components. And even the funky dark knobs looks pretty good. Not bad. Not bad at all. Um, Probably wouldn't hurt to just set that up there. This is also a very exciting place in the job when you start doing your mock-up, because if you ever get to a point where you hit a wall from a standpoint of being motivated to build a guitar, well, pull out all the parts and just lay them up there and shoot a video for yourself, even if it's just for yourself, and then watch the video and maybe make a decision as to whether you want the pick guard or whether you don't want to see the pick guard, and then just ask yourself, what do you think about that master volume? And I say that to say this: if there's the slightest possibility you're probably going to sell the guitar, don't dare do that. Please don't do that, because man, you will eat the candy bar. Very few people, unless you just really luck up and find someone who goes crazy for that. I say that to say this: a lot of times things that are really improvements from a functional player standpoint are detrimental to the value, because most people can't handle change. And the Les Paul type guys, they don't want to see anything deviating from that right there. And I hate that it is that way, but there are a few. I think as time passes, the players are getting more receptive to, you know, doing things differently. You know. But nonetheless, it is the original design is very much tasteful in its own right. When I wire up my Les Pauls, I wire them up differently because I've played Gretsch for so long. I do the neck volume here, the bridge volume there, and then a lot of times I'll just do a master tone, and I'll just do a dummy right there. I'm not the type player where I'm going for, I know that typically I think this is the neck volume typically, and then that's the bridge volume, and then that's the neck tone and the bridge tone. But to me, that's a volume tone maze. That's just too busy. But if you watch a pro player that has played that guitar platform for a very long time, they're very comfortable jumping back and forth. But again, if you're building it for yourself, I like the idea of having volume, possibly tone and tone, meaning this would be the neck volume and the neck tone, the bridge volume and the bridge tone. I don't. I like that design. I don't know why they would have had it otherwise, because it seems odd to me uh, that this potentiometer, which is a forward of center, is actually for the pickup that is behind that pickup. If anything, it seems like that would have been the neck volume, and that would have been the bridge volume, and that would have been the neck tone and the bridge tone. But you know, I've joked in the past that, hey, they must have done something right because they're not copying me, okay, or they're not copying us. We're chasing them. So now I'm going to pause and we're going to put some clear coat on the mahogany. Okay, I think I've spent enough time talking about possibly doing an artificial stain. Uh, it basically boils down to the fact that it just depends on what's in front of you and what it is that you want to achieve. Because it's going to be different. It's going to be completely different for everyone. And I'm not sure if I covered it in the beginning of the video. I think I did. This wood was really ugly right out of the box. It was so ugly. I was terrified by it. It didn't have any color at all. But then over that course of about a year, it got much darker. So it was really beautiful to see the guitar, the mahogany eventually darken. Now, I don't know if the mahogany, if you had have pulled this right out of the box, machined the guitar, built the guitar, had it finished just in rocket time, and then if you had have come in and sealed it with your nitro, I don't know if it would have darkened the same amount or within the same time frame as this has. And I don't know if possibly leaving this unfinished for so long is what contributed to this getting so dark. But when I say considerably darker, um, there's no way you could have convinced me that it would have ever gotten that dark. I would have never believed that. So that's really amazing. Uh, okay, so anyway, I'll stop talking about that. But so I say all that to say this: proceed with caution. You wouldn't want to come in with a real dark brown mahogany and create an artificial finish when you possibly should have just left it alone, and it might have darkened on its own. But then again, I'm looking down. I'm kind of answering my own question because I did seal every bit of that interior, and if you notice, it's still very light. So keep that in your back pocket. That might be something to consider if you're willing, if you have the time and the patience to wait. Might make a big difference. I'm trying to figure out how to do this without making a mess. I don't really know. I guess just open up the can and just do the you know what job. Stop talking. It's not terribly important at all to tape off the binding, because all we're doing, if a little bit of nitro gets on the binding, it's no big deal because this is going to get sanded. But I don't really want to come in here and start painting the binding. But as I do the job, I think I'm just going to rock it through it and let it get on the binding. And just watch it come alive. This is the first time I've ever seen this, so this is really exciting. Is it in the camera? Oh, I forgot to turn on the light. Sorry about that. I left that light off the whole time. I hope that didn't hurt the lighting. Sometimes it looks better if you just leave the lights off. When I first started building the jazz guitars, you would use the vinyl sanding sealer on the first coat and just brush it on. Don't come over here and start trying to paint it. Okay? And you almost saw, I was tempted to like kind of kiss it a little bit. Just leave it alone. I'm trying to keep this. Is that in the camera? That should be in the camera. Oh, 59 cents. Maybe 69 cents. I did very much so wash that binding with, I've already talked about that, the lacquer thinner, when I cleaned it up a little while ago. That was the the long intro where I talked about how really clean the job, get it as orderly as possible, and um, so that if you do come up here and too much lacquer thinner gets on there, if it had some dirt on it, it wouldn't melt it into the binding. Now, let's take a look. Yeah, beautiful. Soaks up really fast. Beautiful guitar. Very happy. Now I got to figure out how to do this and keep it under control. Great thing about having the neck on there, you can just I'm gonna lean that right there. Oh, a little bit too thick there. Now you see my reasoning behind I love sealing everything with just real clear lacquer, no tints whatsoever. That way, if I did get a drop up there, I would actually, if I did get a drop up there, I probably would take some lacquer thinner and wipe it off just to make certain that I head off any potential little dot. But it probably would not be an issue. It's really stunning. I'm glad I thought of this. The reason I like brushing this on rather than spraying it on is this mahogany does, I mean, the lacquer does not atomize, because if it comes out of a spray gun, it hits the air, it's already drying in the air as it's approaching the body, and it has a tendency to land on it like a dust. But if you brush it, think of a yacht. You never see anyone spraying a really beautiful yacht, all the marine woodwork. They always do it with a brush, and it's especially beautiful, and it just really seals the wood, and you get a truer coloring of the wood uh, versus spraying it. Also, it's doesn't seem to be nearly as um, what's the word? Kind of potent as far as the smell. It's a little bit more contained. Whereas if you're spraying it, crap gets in the air, then you need to have your fans on and all that jazz. I'm gonna stand this up so I can, let me just do the job. I don't want to get too much on the binding if I can help it right there, because I don't want to risk. What I did was just, make sure that I really control the brush, because I don't want to load that binding up. Okay. At this point, I'm just allowing that binding to stay out of the control cavity. Work fairly fast. Don't want to do any overlapping right here. This lacquer is not cut at all. Keep that nice straight line. Wouldn't recommend paint brushing across the grain. Always brush across the hole just to keep it from build. You know, if you caught this way, it might have a horrific run that goes down in there, and then that run comes out the other side through like a hole, and then it runs down your body and melts into your beautiful honey amber front and leaves a racing stripe. Also, I like the idea of staying out of that area down there because I don't want to pick up any trash. Put a little bit too much lacquer on at that time, but this is going to soak up. It's a beautiful mahogany. This is Honduran, and the Honduran is this is called laying off, and I think the yacht painters call it something else. I'm almost certain they do. What do they call it? Tipping, rolling and tipping. When they're doing a yacht, they'll have one guy that's a really good roller, and then he'll roll across it, and then they'll have a brush guy with a relatively dry brush, and then he tips it, which gets the roller. Uh, any roller holiday or any roller bead or any rope, anything like that. The brush guy, he does the tipping, and it really levels out the mahogany. So very pretty. It's got a lot of scratches in it and a lot of dings, and I will work that out later on. Looking at this mahogany, I probably could have thinned it a little bit and been okay. Let me clean up some shit right here. I had a mess right there. I got too thick on that last dip. Let me pull this off the table and clean it up. Okay, sorry about that. I had way too much right there, and it was running down that side, and it might have gotten into the binding a little bit. No big deal. I'll clean it up later on. Now, very dark, much darker than I was expecting. This is really cool because I can go relatively fast on this because I do have tape over the binding on the neck, so just gonna do the job. I'll take a chance. I'm trying to keep this in the camera for you guys as best I can. I'm not allowing the mahogany or I'm not allowing the maple to make contact with the table. And just, if it blotches there a little bit, just feather it, get it off the body. But as far as coloring, I'm not painting this. I'm just tipping, or what I call laying off. Let's look at it a little bit. Look at it upside down. Oh, best I can hold it. Really beautiful. Very dark. Not much. I'm gonna try to see if I can find that break point. So you see all the various colors come together. The beautiful cream, all parts binding, the honey amber, the Honduran. Quite stunning. All right. Put it this way. And all right, no. I guess it's okay to just lay it like that right there. Sometimes you can just pat into it like that. Come across it with no pressure because you don't want to load up anything. Again, we're just sealing the wood, but don't dry brush it. I'm glad I thought of that. Make sure you keep it wet because the whole idea is we want this nitrocellulose lacquer in its full strength to just really soak into that mahogany. Really want to soak in. Can't see that curvature, but I got a feeling it's really beautiful. It's some very, very attractive Honduran. Again, that Honduran mahogany came from Woodcraft in Birmingham, and I built 2 flying V's and something else. What else did I build with that? Oh, necks. Yeah, I forgot. I built a bunch of necks. Let me. And some of the most beautiful Honduran I've heard. Again, this body really caught up with it, and I would have never expected that because I got to tell you, as soon as I opened up the box on that body wood, man, I was thinking about sending that stuff back, and I had forgotten. It's like, no, just give it time. It'll darken up. So, and when I say it was orange, it was orange. Pretty unsightly. All right, let's try to do a flyby without getting fingerprints all over it, and especially not dropping it. See how quickly it dries. Look at that. It's already dry. It's amazing. Would you put another coat on that? Probably wouldn't hurt it, but be careful. You'll end up getting way too much. I would recommend at this point, I'm sorry, I'm trying to fight the idiocy of it, but not drop it. It's really beautiful. And I'm also looking at it from the standpoint of like a craftsman. And, do I have any runs? Do I have any ropes? Do I have any, crazy runaway, whatever? And would it have been best to have taped off this top? I say no. One mistake I did make, and I actually have the little tape on the table somewhere. I was supposed to tape over that in the event some dropped through and it started running or something, and I would have known that would have been a horrific nightmare had that have happened. But nonetheless, this neck, probably, I just grabbed hold of that headstock. Probably what you could do with this neck is, that's thick enough up there. You could thin the lacquer a little bit, and maybe do one more coat, but it really doesn't need it. I don't think so. Oh, where I'm going with this is, yeah, I'm going to do that. I don't really have time to pause. I'm just going to do the job. Poured off most of the lacquer. And the thick lacquer that was in my brush, I'm going to mix it into that. That's cut about 40%, which is dangerous. It'll run on you. But I want to use it especially in this end grain, in this heel, I want to really get a good primer base coat in that grain. For the whole standpoint of my reasoning about not spraying it, I don't want anything building up and sealing the grain and restricting a really good penetration of my chemical later on. And I noticed how quickly that dried. It let me know that, yeah, it really soaked up. But had I've come in with the nitrocellulose lacquer full strength, it probably would have gummed up. So if anybody says you can't brush lacquer, you can certainly brush lacquer on your primer coats. And I'm not going to try to come in here and start sealing this anymore. I'm cool with that because that stayed wet for a fairly long time. But there's going to be some really beautiful chatoyancy. This is like a candy cane. It's one of the most beautiful neck. I've built, I think, 4 necks out of this blank already because this blank started out like 2 1/4 inch thick and about 11 or 12 inches wide. It was enormous and it was about 10 feet long. And that was the most perfect area of the board that was quarter sewn. And once I roughed out all the necks, they looked like candy canes. It was so beautiful. There's like a light stripe there, dark, light. And then as you turned it, the candy cane just starts swirling around. It's just a stunning little neck. Okay, so fairly long video, but if I'm building a guitar, I would have loved to have seen someone do everything that I just did on camera. Most important thing is protecting the guitar. I don't want to hurt it. But I also want to show it a little bit primarily for myself, because I do watch these videos to gauge the progress as well as possibly get inspiration or ideas for the next project. And sometimes it helps to watch your own video. So I appreciate you guys dropping in. Let me try to figure out a good way to put this thing down. Bring it in for a landing. Yeah, that ought to be good enough. Close enough. All right, that was a long video. I appreciate you guys dropping in and get the table cleaned up a little bit. Check the time. It's the longest video I've done in a long time. So I hope it recorded all the audio and video because I used to have problems with that. Make sure it's in the camera. I'll turn it this way. All right, guys. Appreciate you dropping in, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.